Hey, I'm Jesse McCartney, and you're listening to Main Pod Girl.
Hey, welcome to Main Pod Girl, a podcast made by Popheads for Popheads. Every episode, we'll be diving into all kinds of pop culture topics with some of our favorite artists and music commentators. I'm your host, AJ Marks. Today's special guest is a real pinch me moment for me. From a soap opera star in the 90s to a member of the boy band Dream Street to 2000s teen heartthrob, from Theodore to Alvin and the Chipmunks, this guest has been on our screens and in our headphones as long as I've been alive. He's had several hits on the Billboard Hot 100, most notably his song Beautiful Soul and Leona Lewis's #1 song Bleeding Love, which he co-wrote. He's also known for his roles in Summerland, Greek, Young and Hungry, Fear the Walking Dead, and the Tinkerbell franchise. It's the one and only Jesse McCartney. So I'm going to jump around a bit in the timeline because we have a lot to go through here. But starting in 2004, the timing of this podcast is kind of funny because I just recently started to get into your debut album for some reason. Like 20 years after its release, it's my most played album of this year so far.
Nice.
I remember having the CD back in the day, but I was like a kid. So it's nice to listen with adult ears. As the artist yourself, like what do you hear when you listen back to that first album?
I hear a lot of my youth. I hear a lot of being 16. I also hear a lot of flaws in my vocals and in my performance. I've certainly grown so much that I just hear sort of my inexperience, if I'm being honest, as a singer. I think this was like right before any of like modern. I think a lot of that album was recorded analog, like before Pro Tools, like before, it was like right on the edge. And so I can hear a lot of like the nuanced things that only come with recording that way. But, ultimately it's a great record. It certainly marks where I was in my life at the tender age of 16 years old. I listened to songs like What's Your Name, which is a song on that album. And it's like
Bob.
literally the sugariest of sugary songs that you could possibly sing. But that's what it was back then. It was literally more than half my lifetime ago. But yeah, I listen to it and I think of like traveling the world for the first time and getting to perform for thousands of people and definitely a special moment in my life.
Do you have like a favorite song from that album?
It's been a long time since I've listened to it, but
Totally fair.
but no, I would probably say maybe That Was Then. I was one of the writers on that song, and
Nice.
I love the melodies on that song.
So, because I got into your music a little bit later, it's funny that like when you were writing all the songs, I didn't realize that you hadn't written all the songs on the first album, but the ones I gravitated to the most ended up being the ones that you wrote. And I think it's just because I identified in some weird way which ones
Oh,
had
nice.
your pen game on it. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's a big compliment. Yeah, I did a lot at the time. I was listening to a lot of like Craig David and Daniel Bedingfield and who else? Maybe Usher.
I can see the Usher.
But yeah, there was a lot of like that rhythmic style singing. So if you listen to like That Was Then or She's No You, you can hear that influence a lot. But yeah, that was like just when I was starting to get going as a writer was that album.
Around this time, you also covered the Jonathan Brooks song, I'll Try, for Disney Mania. I don't know if you remember this, but that's quite literally like maybe my favorite cover of all time. She's such a brilliant writer, and you did a great rendition of it. I know it's branded as like a Disney stars sing their favorite Disney songs, but did you have a hand in choosing this song specifically?
Oh man, it's such a lifetime ago, AJ. It's like hard to remember the actual, behind the curtain specifics
Totally.
of how it went down. But I certainly remember the song, and I remember recording it. I think they probably did give me options. They were pretty good about giving me options to sift through and choose from. But man, I don't remember. I really don't.
Let's jump a little bit closer to recent memory. 2014, jumping 10 years in the future. I'm a massive fan of that album in Technicolor, that comeback. It feels conceptual yet lighthearted, and it moved your music in like a fun new direction. It also followed several years of delaying the unreleased album Have It All and leaving Hollywood Records to release independently. So what was your ultimate goal with In Technicolor, and did it play out any differently than you expected?
After leaving Hollywood, I think the goal is just to sort of like prove that I could do it on my own, without the arm and deep pockets of a major record company.
Hmm.
It was important for me to be able to show and like save the fans and other artists. I think that you don't need necessarily a big major record company to make a great product or make a great album. And I think we achieved that goal. I mean, I worked with three producers, they're called the 11, who produced that entire project. And they're like real musicians, Berkeley guys that I think, played horns all through Berkeley, but great composers, great songwriters. And I knew I wanted to do something sort of throwback and had that sort of live 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s feel. And we recorded that album in New York. And, it took a long time to sort of aggregate all of the songs. I think originally we had like 20 records and then whittled it down to 13 or 4, however many's on the album. But yeah, it was just in a moment to sort of prove myself as a writer and really hone in on my vocals. And yeah, I was happy with the way it turned out. I think it was a big success. Performing it live was an even greater success, like getting those songs up on their feet and performing them on stage with a live band. And some of those dates, we even had live horns. It was just like a whole nother level. I love making that record.
Good. Yeah, no, that's my personal favorite.
Oh, good.
2014, that was like a period of time where being able to move from a label to an independent artist was like a totally foreign concept. I think like Macklemore had just come out and had some independent experience. And I was talking about this with Dev, who around the same time moved from a major to an independent. But before that, I think there were a lot of major artists that were on major labels, and then as soon as they were dropped, we never heard from them again. So it's really great that you kind of on that forefront of like, let me move into this independent space, not wait around for some other signature, and let me just like go and do it myself. And I love that.
Yeah, I mean, eventually it was just like, you know what? The only reason I really ever use them or need them is for money. And I have some of that now. So I can fund my own stuff. It's not about like, I don't need to have their checkbook because I can do it on my own. And I don't really use them at all creatively, if I'm being honest. I mean, I use them for photo shoots and for, I don't want to say, that they didn't have a hand in, some of the visuals, but, musically, I knew I was capable to do it on my own. So I get to write some of the songs that I knew that maybe they wouldn't approve, that was really refreshing.
And then also, jumping forward another 10 years, we go to 3 days ago when you dropped the new EP, All's Well, which came out on my birthday. So thanks for the birthday gift.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you. Happy birthday to you too. I also found out your birthday is tomorrow.
Yeah, I know. I actually forgot about it until like 3 days ago because I've been so knee deep in rehearsals. But yeah, tomorrow.
It makes sense. Yeah, with like the project coming out and everything. I feel like once that's out, then you're like, oh yeah, so now I get to celebrate my birthday.
That's right.
And I was going to say, I especially love Silver Spoon. The storytelling is so descriptive, and it does that thing in the bridge that kind of reminds me of Skater Boy by Avril Lavigne, where it's like in third person the whole time, and you're like, why are they singing this song? Like, what's their purpose for singing it? And then all of a sudden we get to understand your role in the story. What was the writing process for that song like?
Well, it was based on a few people that I know in life, but one specifically, somebody that just kind of like skates through life and, they don't really have a purpose. They're not purpose driven, but they're also just a little sad. They cover it up well because they have things and they travel or whatever. So I had sort of a good inspiration for that. And then it was just a matter of like, yeah, how do I tie? Because you're right. It's a good point. It's like, it's one thing to talk about somebody and describe them and like, but ultimately it's like, if it doesn't affect you or if it doesn't make you feel a certain way, it connects less with the audience. And so that's why in the bridge, we brought it in and tied it into this story, which was sort of a more fictional part of the story, which is like, if I had been with a girl like this, how miserable it would have made me, despite having all these nice things that she would have brought to the table and maybe her flying me private across the world or whatever it was, it ultimately would have just been a really sad situation. It was just something that I wrote down in my notes app. And I went to the studio one day and I was like sifting through all the notes and trying to figure out, that idea kind of sucks. Like, what is this idea? And I came across, I was like, oh yeah, this is good. And I just kind of built upon it. And honestly, we wrote it pretty fast. That was like a 1-day session where we just kind of knocked it out. And then the production took weeks or a month. But yeah, It's a fun song.
That's kind of my favorite thing to do with songwriting is like starting from a place that I know, and that's like in real life, and then just building upon it in a fictional way to kind of divorce it from my personal experience. So it's not technically about anyone in particular, but it kind of is. And you have another song on this EP with Young Gravy, Make a Baby, which is like, it's cheeky, it's a bit goofy, it has a fun single artwork. What made Young Gravy like a perfect fit for this song?
Just the lyrical content. I mean, like you said, it's like super, cheeky and cheesy and fun, and it's supposed to be lighthearted. And I feel like that's a lot of his music, and he sells that so well, and it's just felt on brand. We had been talking about doing something for a while, and after being in the studio and writing that chorus, I was like, if there's ever a song to send to Young Gravy, this is going to be it. I don't have a ton of records like this just laying around. So so I texted it to him and he loved it. And he was on board pretty much from the beginning. He was like, dude, this is great. I'll start working on some verses and I'll send them to you. And we just kind of went back and forth for about, I don't know, few months until we had verses that we both liked. And then, we did one session, I think, together in the studio, just kind of getting some rhythmic ideas for his pocket for the verses. And then I kind of was like, yeah, that's great. And then I stepped away and he filled all the lyrics in, and then you look at the visuals too, which a lot of those were his ideas, taking photos with pregnant women.
The visualizer is so funny.
Yeah, it's just on brand. It was just he's a master marketer. So I knew he'd do well with this song.
Is there going to be a music video for that song or?
I don't think so. We just did like a visualizer on the set that day. Our schedules are both just insane and we just couldn't find a time to do it. But the visualizer, I think, is just equally as entertaining. It's just the two of us with like pregnant women running around the house.
Yeah, I liked it. I think it kind of worked as a music video in itself anyway. Let's talk about the EP title, All's Well. What does that represent?
Originally, we were thinking we'd call it The Well, but it didn't really represent the record that well. I mean, I felt like it was a little stark for what the actual songs are. However, there is that one song, and so we kind of wanted to put a spin on it, which is like, despite that song, all is well. And it just felt like a nice like title for me. It's like I've been doing this you're able to do an interview and jump from one decade to another decade. So I've been doing this multiple decades and all is well. I've had like such a great career. I've been able to maintain a career in pop, which is like a rare thing. I get to travel, I get to tour, and ultimately like all is well. Like I'm still making music and I'm still doing my thing. It just felt like a very appropriate title for me.
Speaking of like being able to maintain a career in pop music, the song Beautiful Soul, like, are you shocked how well that's held up and like stayed in cultural consciousness?
Yeah, I am definitely. Even 5, 10 years ago, certainly 10 years ago, you wouldn't be able to say that yet. But now that it's been 20 years, there's definitely a generational exchange, right? I mean, we've definitely gone from millennials to the next generation. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of Gen Zers singing the song and that know it. And I see it on TikTok from young people and Instagram. And it just feels like one of those songs that is a part of like American pop fabric of this country.
Absolutely.
And it's cool. I used to there was a point in which I hated singing the song because I've been singing it for years. And now I've kind of come full circle on it because it's like just so nostalgic for me and for the fans. And just feels like a really nice moment for everybody that loves pop music.
Yeah, I had that same kind of trajectory with my first song where I think after the first couple years, I was like, okay, we can bury this. We don't need to put this in the set list anymore. But now it's like, if we're playing a show, we're going to play that song because I think I was like 10 when we wrote it. It was like the first song I've ever written. So I just feel like it's like, obviously it doesn't represent who I am now, but it's fun. It's like a nice little throwback. So, and talking about Gen Zers and like their connection to your music, there was an episode of Sweet Life with Zack and Cody, which might be the most popular episode of that show ever, or the most referenced episode. It's so funny because I have this 18-year-old coworker who was like, who's Jesse McCartney? And I was like, oh, he was on that episode of Sweet Life with Zack and Cody where Maddie and London dress up as waiters. And he was like, oh, I love that guy. Like, it was so funny. Like, I knew that was going to be his entry point. And I'm sure like Hannah Montana and like other media that kind of sticks around past like when it initially comes out. So it's like that and Leavin', and like, it's great to see these songs kind of have a lot of shelf life.
Yeah, I mean, that show is like one of those things that people consistently come up to me about. And I think it was just one episode, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe, yeah. So it's just pretty wild. Like when you're doing, I think we shot that like all my scenes in a day, maybe 2 days, and like for 2 days of work to become such a like monumental part of people's memories is just it's pretty wild to think about.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like you still see it in tons of like reaction memes on Twitter and
Yeah,
stuff like that.
totally. Yeah.
So other than playing yourself on that episode, what role do you feel like you get recognized for the most?
I mean, yeah, it's got to be that or the Hannah Montana episode with Miley, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, between Sweet Life of Zack and Cody and Miley, those two, I think, for the younger people. But then there's like more like horror movie and thriller fans that come up to me about Chernobyl Diaries.
Yes. See, that's my favorite role of yours.
Chernobyl and Fear the Walking Dead, they all that fan base is the same versus like the Hannah Montanas and Sweet Lives of the world.
Yeah.
They're more into like the, comic book stuff and the horror stuff. But yeah, it's interesting. Like I just kind of like can tell like that, when a grown 50-year-old man walks up to me, he's like, I'm like, this is probably not from Hannah Montana.
If you had to go back and revive any of your past roles for a sequel or a reboot, which one would it be?
Probably Summerland, just so I could work on the beach every day again.
Nice.
That was one of the greatest gigs ever because I used to be able to. I would literally move from New York to Los Angeles as a New Yorker, and then was shooting on Malibu Beach every day and surfing and got free surf lessons. And so I'd probably love to reprise that role just so I could have that schedule again.
Nice. What's your favorite memory of filming Summerland?
Honestly, that like being on the beach, man. I mean, it's like just. Yeah, I mean, I remember like being sad when we had to shoot on set for all of the interior scenes, and I just wanted to be on location in Malibu or Leo Carrillo shooting all of the surfing stuff. But no, of course that, but also, getting to work with people like Lori and Ryan Quanten and Zack, of course.
Yeah,
and
Zac Efron before he was
Zac Efron. Yeah, but I didn't have a lot of scenes with him, but we still got to hang out a lot off set, and I was able to make a lot of friends on that show early on.
Nice. I remember like 10 years ago finding out that you played Theodore in Alvin and the Chipmunks, and my jaw was like on the floor. I was like,
yeah,
how slow do you have to record those songs to pitch them up like that?
Pretty slow. I would probably talk to you like this, but also up here like this. And then they speed it up.
Okay, so you were changing the tone of your voice and not just the speed.
Oh, yeah. Tone and speed, but with the same intensity or inflection as a normal conversation.
Yeah.
But it was like there was a sweet spot. If you were too high, then you didn't sound like Theodore. If you were too low, you sounded like Alvin. And if you spoke too slowly, there was like a sweet spot. But once you got the hang of it, it was pretty simple.
That's so cool because I imagine for voice acting and for singing, that's really tricky. That's like a lot more hurdles to go through than like a normal role. That's so cool.
I mean, the nice part, it was like you didn't have to deal with all of the hair and makeup and like being on camera, which was nice. You didn't have to worry if you had a zit that day because you could just like show up and record and do your job. But yeah, I mean, you had to take care of your voice and have to be ready to record for like 5-6 hours at a clip.
And I imagine that would probably be like 3 hours if you weren't going like this.
Exactly. Right.
Do you have any particular roles that you would want to go into the future, like any more like sitcoms like Young and Hungry?
I mean, I love comedy. I really do. And it's like something I feel like I've gotten just better at over the years, probably just from watching so many great comedies, but also just being on set and working on shows like Young and Hungry. And, my wife and I do a lot of sketch writing in our house and just like editing and timing and all of that, like it just speaks to me. And I know when I want to sit down and sort of unwind and watch something great, it's usually a comedy show.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I'd love to get more into that in general. And I just really look forward to making people laugh. I notice like when I'm talking to people and when I'm having conversations, like I'm always looking for the little in to sort of change people's mood. And so I don't know. I think I'd probably like to nurture that a little bit more going into the future in terms of roles.
That Young and Hungry role kind of fit you like a glove. Like it really felt like you seemed really comfortable in it.
Yeah.
Maybe the Make a Baby whatever could be like a YouTube series or something if you guys were writing sketches. That's great.
Pretty good idea.
So the All's Well tour starts soon. You're prepping for it right now. I was so excited to go see your show in Boston, and then I realized I'll be in New York that day, so I think I'm going to be at your New York show.
Oh, nice. That's great.
What can I expect on the set list? And do you have any surprises up your sleeve?
I definitely have one or two surprises in terms of, song choices,
Hmm.
but then you can expect just super high energy. I'm like a little scared of how up tempo and intense like the set is. Like I've been rehearsing the last few days and I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to make it through. I mean, I'm going to, but it's just a lot and I got to be really, careful about resting. I think I was like the first 3 days of rehearsals, I was getting so excited that I was singing every single song 3 times we'd be running the set. But you can expect a really fun show, songs from every album and, obviously the new EP, amazing live rhythm section. My drummer, who I've been playing with for 15 years, insane guitar player, amazing bassist, and just an incredible lighting show. I just, I pour a lot of effort into the little things, making sure that all the lights are timed up with the music. And I spent an hour yesterday on one song, just like matching hits to some of the live arrangement, lighting hits
Hmm.
till 1 in the morning. So, just a lot of thought and effort's been put into it. And yeah, just expect to have a great time, I guess.
I'm excited. So now let's get into a little hypothetical scenario game I like to play on Main Pod Girl called Call DM Block. So Jesse, I'm going to give you three celebrities and you're going to have to call one, DM one, and block one.
Okay.
This theme is people who sort of kind of share a name with you. So first one is Jessie J. Second one is Jessica Simpson. Third one is Paul McCartney. Call DM Block, Jessie J, Jessica Simpson, Paul McCartney.
Okay, I'm gonna call Paul. I'm gonna DM Jesse J, and then I'd probably block Jessica. Sorry, Jessica.
What are you talking about with Paul on your call?
Oh man, I wouldn't even know where to start. But like, hey man, first of all, we have the same last name.
Have you ever met him?
I've never met Paul actually. I've met a bunch of people from that generation too. I've just never crossed his path. But yeah, I mean, I'm just, an insane fan. I would probably say all the things that he's heard a billion times before for most people, but I'd probably ask him if we could write a song together. I actually did a studio session at the Henson Recording Studios in LA, and
Mhm.
it was McCartney in room A and McCartney in room B, and it was both of us, and we both had sessions that day.
Oh, wow.
And I never got to meet him. And at one point, I was like, I had to clarify, like, which McCartney room am I? It's pretty funny.
That's so good. Yeah, no, when I met him, it was at my graduation. I went to his college.
Oh, nice.
It was like on stage in front of everyone. I was just walking across and I like kind of knew what I was going to say to him. I can't remember what it is now, but I knew what I was going to say to him and I walked up to him. And before I can say anything, he gives me like a ring, which I was not expecting. I guess it's like a class ring. And then I just started talking about the ring with him. And then before I knew, and I was totally caught off guard. Before I knew it, he was like, look up. And we took a picture together. And then I walked away and I was like, oh my God, I totally forgot that was Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
So I had the weirdest, most random experience with him.
I know. A lot of times when you meet somebody like that, like your brain just becomes numb, you're
Yeah.
just like, you're taking it in. And yeah, I get it.
I had seen him a bunch of times before then because he had come in a bunch to the school. But it's funny, as soon as he walks through the door, you're like, oh, that's just like my grandfather or something. You know what I mean? It just feels like it feels like you've seen him a million times before. He doesn't feel like a celebrity, which is really weird. So what are we talking about with Jessie J in the DMs?
Oh man. I mean, I truly love her voice. I would just, I'd probably just slip in and be like, hey, I'd love to write for you,
I could see that.
because I think you've got an incredible voice. And then for Jessica, I'd probably, yeah, I mean, I've blocked her, so I'm not saying anything to her,
I
right?
guess not. Yeah. And so just one last game. We have a game called Song Interrogation. I promise it's not as scary as it sounds. I'm going to use the titles of your songs as jumping off points for some silly rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Cool.
All right. You have a song called Checkmate. Are you good at chess?
Terrible at chess.
Terrible?
Absolutely terrible.
All right. I need an ego boost, so we got to play chess at some point then.
Okay, you got it. You'll for sure win.
You have a song called The Well. Do you believe in wishing wells?
No, I don't believe in wishing wells. I like the concept. I certainly like, throwing change in there for somebody to come along and take it out later.
Yeah.
I think wells are really peaceful from the outside, just not if you're inside of them.
Totally fair.
Metaphorically speaking.
Yes. Okay, so you have a song called How Do You Sleep? Do you have a bedtime ritual?
For sure. I generally like to shower before bed. Like I need to just like rinse off, even if it's just like a nice like light rinse. And then I've got like a little skincare routine. I do like my exfoliating, my cleansing, and then I put some usually like either a mask or some lotion on, and then I get in bed and I kind of like to snack in bed, which is annoying because then I have to get up and brush my teeth again. But I'm like,
Yeah.
I like to eat like messy things too. Like my wife is like, "Are you really eating lasagna in our bed right now?"
Oh,
Like,
wow. I was
that.
expecting like Cheez-Its, but lasagna is a whole other level.
No, I'm kind of kidding, but like sometimes not really kidding. But like yeah, like I'll sit in bed and like you're exactly right, like Chex Mix or like Cheez-Its and like sit and watch Seinfeld or something for like half hour and then go to bed. But yeah, nothing too crazy.
It's nice to get some escapism content before you go to bed, just so you can kind of like go to bed on kind of blank mind instead of on all the things that happened that day.
And always something familiar, right?
Yeah,
Like Friends or Seinfeld. It's just like I feel like it's a good way to drift off.
totally.
Like
Totally.
if I was never to wake up too, I'd be like, at least I got to watch The Pen, you know?
Okay, so you have a song called Body Language. Do you have any tells if you're lying? And when typing this, I was like, do I have any tells when I'm lying? So maybe you don't know if you do, but
Yeah, I don't know that I know. I think that's like the point, right? Is like, is other people know?
so your wife's never told you.
Well, I never lie to my wife.
Well, she might know if you're lying to other people.
Oh, sometimes I can get a little fantastic with stories. Like I'm a good embellisher, but I only do it for the sake of the story, like to make the story more interesting. It's not that it's like the whole thing's a lie. It's just like being more descriptive sometimes like has a better payoff at the end.
So your tell is that if you're telling a story, you're you're
Yeah.
embellishing.
If I'm embellishing a lot, Katie's like, okay, I know some of the details here might be put on. And I'm like,
That's
yeah,
funny.
but we have that argument all the time. I'm like, if it's a story that's true and like you're making it more descriptive, you're making it more fun. But anyway,
The perils of a songwriter. All right, and the last one is you have a song called New Stage. I know you might not know the specific number, but how many of the shows on this tour are new stages for you?
a lot of them are the same. A lot of these venues I've played for years, but there's a couple new ones. I would say there's probably like three or four.
Right. Nice.
Yeah. Do you know?
I don't know. I
Oh,
don't
okay,
I don't
okay,
have it
okay.
wasn't a test.
Oh, okay. I thought it was the test.
No, I guess I could find out that information, but I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a lot of research.
I know it's at least three or four, but
Is it ever weird coming into like a new venue or
it's usually the same, to be honest with you. I mean, there's definitely some subtle differences. Certainly the acoustics is what I care about the most. So like
Yeah.
I'll always go to the front of the house and see what it sounds like. You know, if there's any bass traps in the room or if there's any like bad spots that you don't want to be sitting. I'll sometimes say like, hey, can we just rope that off? I don't want anybody sitting there. It's a terrible view of the stage, or like I don't like this what it sounds like there.
nice?
But generally, like you could put me in a backstage dressing room and I would have no idea where I'm at. They're all kind of the same.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jesse, for joining me.
Thank you, AJ. I appreciate it, man.
This was awesome. I had so much fun.
Yeah, it was great. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I'll see you in New York, I guess.
See you in New York.
All righty.
Thank you again, Jesse, for joining me, and thank you to Noah for the theme music. Make sure to rate and review us on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on right now. Bye, y'all.